Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Welch with the Welch team at Keller Williams and Keller Williams St. John's.
And I am Scott Goldstein with Atlantic Trust Mortgage.
Today, we are discussing market trends and predictions for 2025. So I have been asked, what are some key market trends that we anticipate for buyers and sellers that are coming up? And so a lot of times what I'm seeing, especially in the last week, I was just telling Scott here that our calls are up 75%. So we always see a downturn come the holidays. Fortunately, we do not get snow here. But around the holiday season, we call it seasonality. People tend to take a break and looking in the market, and then it starts to pick back up after the first of the year. But we actually saw a little uptick before the first of the year. So what we're seeing are the buyers are out making phone calls, they're out driving around. And so there's a lot of activity taking place so far, and we're just now in the first week of January.
Yeah, that's great. We're starting to see applications rise a little bit, not as much as you guys, but it typically starts with you guys, and then they'll come to us for pre-approval and all that. So that's a good way to start the year.
So what would you give potential buyers or refinancers that are planning to move in 2025?
So what we've kind of seen is expectations about 3 or 4 months ago that we were all hoping and foreseeing rates to kind of drop back into the fives. But then both MBA, Mortgage Banker Association, as well as Fannie Mae came out with their forecasts, which were not as positive as what we wanted. They are expecting interest rates to kind of maintain in the low sixes through 2025 into 2026. So while I think a lot of people were, putting buying on hold until they saw rates drop, we're kind of in the new norm.
Yeah.
So this is the new normal. So kind of the buyers that are waiting, for rates to drop before they start looking, you can kind of, get off the fence and start looking, because this is kind of where rates will be for the next year or two.
Okay, I think my favorite topic I hear all the time, and I'm going to go off script here for a second. People keep saying the Fed's going to drop the rates. How does that affect interest rates, actually?
So we get that all the time. So, the Fed just dropped the rates a quarter or a half. We should see interest rates drop immediately. That is not the case. So Fed rates do not have a direct impact on mortgage rates. They do have an impact, but usually when there's an anticipation of the Fed rate dropping, it's already built into the interest rates.
Okay, good. So did y'all hear that? It actually doesn't affect how the rates are with the buyers.
Correct.
So don't anticipate if you hear the Fed is dropping the rates that the interest rates are actually going to fall.
Yeah.
Because they don't always do that. And so we hear that all the time.
And a big key indicator is inflation. As inflation comes down, we should see interest rates come down as well.
So one of the other things I like to talk about, especially with buyers in this market, because people are like, oh, I'm waiting for interest rates to come down. So if I'm at let's say a 6.5% and rates come to 6%, or if they go up to 7%, obviously it's going to depend on the house that I'm buying and the amount that I'm financing. But how does that look as far as my monthly payment?
So depending on, your price point, it's going to have a little bit different effect. But typically for every quarter in interest rate, you could see $100 to $150 difference in payment. But again, price point is going to have a big variance there.
So $100 to $150. So you're saying if I don't go get Starbucks every day, I could probably afford whatever the interest rate is.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of programs out there, whether it's a rate buy down, a permanent rate buy down, a 2-1 buy down. There's a lot of options out there for somebody that wants to get into the home now, refinance when rates do come down, right, which hopefully will be in the next, year and a half to 2 years.
Well, I'm definitely not the mortgage expert, even though I do have my mortgage license. But with that being said, I always depend on what's going on with the market and what type of financing are available for the customers, because there are so many options. I don't think buyers actually realize the options that they have.
Right.
All right. So, Scott, with potential changes in economic conditions or housing policies, do you think these factors will shape the real estate market in 2025? And should consumers prepare for any significant shifts?
So anytime there is a new incoming president, people are always waiting. Well, I want to see what happens with the election. I want to see what changes don't happen immediately. So, rates are still where they were, actually after the election, rates shot up a little bit. Now they have slowly come back down because it's that knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
But, without knowing the policies that's going to change moving forward, there's a chance we could see rates improve, but it's hard to speculate. And we kind of follow what,
Right.
NBA, Fannie, Freddie, what their forecasts look like. They're typically right. They're not always right. And if they're wrong and rates, drop even lower than expected, that's great for the market. But we'll see. I mean, I will say last time Trump was in office, now there were other factors. COVID, was a big one, but we had some of the best years in our industry. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, they always say you don't know you're in a shift until you're through the shift. And so to us, we came out of COVID. There were a lot of buyers in the market. We kind of died off a little bit. Things went back to normal. And so I feel like we're coming back into a stable market. And so for us, when you're pricing your home to sell or when you're working with an agent, you really need to look at all the factors that you have to dive into as a buyer or a seller. And so with that being said, for both buyers and sellers entering 2025, the top tips for navigating this changing landscape, what would you give? Advice would you give?
So we always talk about this, but it's very important for a buyer to get pre-approved early. Okay. Because the question we always get is, what's the maximum that I'm approved for? It's not really the maximum you're approved for. It's what kind of payment are you comfortable with? Because you may qualify for a lot more home than the payment that comes with it. So it's really preparing for what you as a buyer is comfortable for, learning what programs are available to you, and then moving forward at that point.
Yeah. And some people are like, oh, I would like to get into a condo or a townhome because the value on the actual mortgage is a lot less. But one of the things that they don't take into consideration are the HOA fees and CDBs. And so if you're taking all of those into account, you could actually probably spend a little bit more on a single family home than getting into a condo or a townhome. Although a condo and townhome is a great starting point for most buyers. So, all right. Anything else we should discuss?
I think we've discussed a lot of good information we put out there.
Okay, great. All right. Well, if you guys are looking to buy or sell a home in 2025, please reach out to Welch team and definitely get pre-qualified with Scott before you take that first step. Looking forward to working with you.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.